Marvel and X-Men comic book legend Chris Claremont did a spotlight panel at C2E2 this weekend, and it sounds like it didn't go all that well. I guess people were kind of waiting on him, and then when he did show up, it sounds like he was a bit tired and had a big case of the I don't give a fucks and had said some stuff that's absolutely going to get him in a little bit of trouble, but I don't think he cares. Just judging from the information that we do have, and here to talk to me about that is X-Men superfan. Doc, how you doing, Doc?
I'm great, man, and uncancelable Chris Claremont, because this man does not give any shits. And
well, we're about to find out if he's uncancelable. I have doubts about that.
Well, the thing is, I'm pretty sure his contract's pretty ironclad. I know we'll talk about that later. The people that love him are still going to love him. About a panel that he wrote.
Let's get into this. This is basically taken from the Comics XF play-by-play of the panel itself. I haven't seen the video, so I'm going off what they had to say, and not surprising, they were a little bit more offended than most people. The first thing I think that might get him in trouble, he ends up talking about Thor: Love and Thunder, and according to Comics XF, he was complaining about the movie. Not surprising. I think a lot of people have complained about that movie. And he ended up saying Tessa Thompson, who plays Valkyrie, should go back and make another Men in Black, sorry, Persons in Black movie. I think he might get in a little bit of trouble for that one, Doc.
It's a meta joke about the whole X-Persons, mutants, X-Men, and his X-Men having, mostly women in it, but it was still called X-Men.
Yeah, I think he was making fun of current society.
So I'm
man and men.
Yes, exactly. He's absolutely making fun of that, but I'm waiting for all of the super offended people to think it's a black joke.
Yeah, that's where he's going to get in trouble. But
look, you can't worry about getting in trouble from fucking morons. I mean,
get with the real world. You can say something and mean one thing on social media. It can be misconstrued and it can ruin your career.
I understand that. But
let's live in the real world here, Doc.
Yes, and and let's also live in the real world that Chris Claremont is a 70-some-year-old man that doesn't give a shit.
Well, it definitely appears that way. He was even bashing on Jim Lee's design for Jean Grey.
He never liked that 90s Jim Lee costume. I'm pretty sure he didn't like it in X-Men 1. Definitely didn't like it in the cartoon. Does not like it anymore, 30 years later.
So he did not like that. I don't think he'll get in trouble for that one, Doc, because that can be subjective.
In fairness, though, for all the redesigns for X-Men 1, that was the weakest of them.
Let's get to the other things that I think he might get in trouble with, because he does go into race here a little bit. He starts talking about X-Men Forever, calls it stupid, was not happy about what happened with Gambit being a hero, being with Rogue. He doesn't understand that. And then he starts saying he can get away with being another white guy playing fast and loose with racial identity because I'm British, and we've been doing this for 1,000 years. Saying that he would have turned Kitty into the cosmic daughter of T'Challa and Storm thanks to the Panther God, and he would have turned Kitty black, and then she would have had to decide if she wanted to stay black or go back to being white. I don't think people are going to like that either, Doc.
Yes, it's probably going to get him in trouble, but it's more of a case of Chris is a very, very creative person, and sometimes he needs a competent editor like Annie or Wheezy to reel him the fuck back in, because that is a stupid idea. I mean, it's just a dumb idea on its surface, no matter how...
Just think about how many dumb ideas wouldn't have come to existence in modern comic books if we just had decent editorial to say, that one's a pass.
Yeah.
Let's rework that one.
Exactly. I think that's the reason why we had so much success with Chris's X-Men in the 80s and so many hits and so few misses. You had a writer that wants to swing at every fucking pitch thrown his way. You had some editors there that would tell him, hey, don't swing at that one. It's a really, really terrible pitch. And you know what? You only get so many strikes before you're out, even in baseball and in your career.
If you had a good agent would have said, sir, do not say that you're going to play fast and loose with racial identities because you're British. That's not going to go over well in 2022.
Yeah, he might get in trouble for that. But honestly, I'm pretty sure that's the last thing anybody's going to get really that mad about him, because he's actually kind of agreeing with the Twitterati that colonialism bad. I'm pretty sure that's what he's implying here. British racial identity, their colonial past, blah, blah, blah. That's why I was able to get away with it, but it was bad and we shouldn't do it. I'm pretty sure that's the point he's trying to make here, but he's just...
That's not going to be received that way. But my favorite line in this thread right here, firstly, is when the Comics XF guy says, Claremont just did a Cajun accent and our Louisiana friend shook. I love that. It's like, that was gold. I wish that was a moment in a comic book. That would be...
Yeah, well,
issue.
Exactly. Well, we did. It was when Chris was writing Gambit. There was a lot of Cajun accents that were not all that great, but at the same time, they got the point across that he was definitely very Cajun. Now, whether they were cliched as fuck is an entirely different story.
I just want to be in a room where a bad Cajun accent makes someone shook. Look.
Yeah, well, maybe Comics XF's Louisiana friend's a pussy.
Wow, we've seen what these guys look like. That's almost guaranteed. Let's talk about some of the other stuff I definitely agree with as far as Chris Claremont and his Spotlight panel. He did talk about Art Adams is so good. They were talking about some of the stories they did together. He says he and Ann weren't ready to do Long Shot 2, but Asgard War was a gap filler. Tried to see how much we could get away with. Talks about Magma being dumb. He wants to do a sequel with Art, but he doesn't do sequentials, talking about Art Adams, and says Marvel can't afford him anyway.
Oh, no, there is 0% chance that Marvel can afford art. Yeah, Art hasn't done sequentials, I guess, since the mid-90s, maybe early 2000s. He's a cover artist now, kind of like J. Scott Campbell. He even sells his cover art. Hell, they don't even hire Art anymore. They just hire his clone, Nick Bradshaw.
Well, maybe they would be able to afford him if they weren't paying Claremont to not work. He also talked about that. It says Claremont is complaining that his Marvel contract keeps him doing nothing for a while, compares himself to Congress. I think that's a complaint not only Chris Claremont has, but X-Men fans have worldwide. Why aren't we getting more Chris Claremont? You're paying the guy to essentially do nothing. He's just sitting around and you bring him in for a miniseries once a year or so like that, or maybe he gets to contribute to an anthology. We want more Chris Claremont.
He is a long-form comic book storyteller. Use him on long-form comic book stories. It's not that fucking difficult.
Well, stop paying if you're not going to have him work. He's obviously frustrated. He wants to write stories, and Marvel Comics essentially won't let him.
Yes, exactly. I'm pretty sure they probably at this point I'd be surprised if they're not paying him more to not work than they are whenever he does work. Put him on literally you could give him a 4-year run of Squirrel Girl, and I'm pretty sure you could turn that book into, or like a 10-year run on Squirrel Girl, he could turn that book into like a top seller.
Oh, that would be very difficult. But he had a lot of other stuff to say that I definitely agreed with. He ended up talking about some of the stuff going on with the MCU, talks about how the MCU Phase 4 isn't very good. The Eternals is flop. He spoiled Multiverse of Madness. That movie's been out for long enough. You should have seen it by then. Talks about how much he liked the cast of Shang-Chi and thinks that Michelle Yeoh should have got a Best Actor nod for that movie. And then he says they better not mess up Miss Marvel or he's going to be pissed. And then someone tells him that Miss Marvel is the first mutant in the MCU. And he said, what the fuck?
Yeah, that's about par for the course, because
that's
that would be my
response. He's not the only one. That's what you and I said. Like,
yes, exactly. Everyone that was an actual like comic book fan, whenever they're like, yes, and mutant, or well, they didn't specifically say, but imply the hell out of she's a mutant. Everybody else just went, what the fuck? We weren't mad. We weren't like all outraged or anything like that. We were just like, wait, what the fuck? Because it just didn't even process in our brain. And that's the same thing with Chris. He had the same, oh, you people are fucking stupid response.
Didn't see that coming.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh yeah, I didn't see that coming, but Jesus Christ, it was fucking dumb. You know why I didn't see it coming? Because it was fucking retarded. That's why.
Yeah, it's a really bad idea. But hey, bad ideas do happen. He also talks about the current age of kind of Krakoa and where it came from. He talked about giant size X-Men and sending Krakoa into space, and talking about he killed Thunderbird. Of course, they told him, they brought him back and said, well, okay, that best they could do a good story. But he specifically says this age of X-Men, the Krakoan age, he calls it Krakoa and I guess Arrakis instead of Arakko, won't exist in 5 years. This era of X-Men in comic books is like DC Comics from 1960 to 1970. It's basically going to be unmemorable and nobody's going to pay attention to any of it.
We had 56, 57 years of X-Men as they were. There's going to be a 10-year memory hole where the reprints will just say nothing important happened during this time. There's a certain segment of the X-Men readership that really want this era to continue forever. The problem is it is not a sustainable number. And eventually, one way or the other, Marvel is going to accept that. And they are going to revert back to what we had for the first 55, 57 years of X-Men. I don't think they're going to undo this. I think they're just going to straight up memory hole it like it didn't happen.
Well, it's not like this couldn't have been effective. Obviously, House of X and Powers of 10 were very effective. People were excited for this. It's just the execution itself has been so terrible. He kind of hints at that as well, talking about Kitty in Marauders. He says she's a drunk and none of her friends are taking care of her. And he kind of talks about Kitty and Emma Frost being friends and saying none of this stuff makes sense. And he's right. That's one of the things we talked about as soon as Marauders came out. It's like, why is Kitty Pryde an alcoholic now? Why is she getting knuckle tattoos? This is garbage. And we're not the only ones. Obviously, the greatest X-Men writer of all time sees it as well.
Well, yeah, because he recognizes who these characters are, the writers and the editors. And I'm sorry, even John Hickman, none of them understood who these characters were. They just started writing whatever the fuck they wanted.
The good news is if you're frustrated with X-Men and you think this is really stupid, you're not the only one. The greatest X-Men writer of all times feels that way as well. Hopefully Chris doesn't get canceled for all this stuff. He mentioned his NYU gig and stuff. People are definitely going to try to do some very bad things to him because he's a little bit off the cuff. He seems like he's very frustrated at the moment, and he had a case of the I don't give a fucks, said some things that were on his mind, and people are going to definitely try to twist his words and try to make him out to be something that he really isn't. But that's just kind of the way, modern society is. It's sad.
Yeah, but I still think he's the uncancelable Chris Claremont. Honestly, the Twitter's probably going to forget about it in 3 days. So thankfully it happened on a Friday. So by the time we get around to Monday, the fucking news cycle's already shifted, even in comics. And because it's C2E2, somebody else is going to say something even more fucking retarded over the weekend. And that's going to be where the focus ends up. Whoever fucks up today or tomorrow, Chris should send them a, thank you basket.
We are in one of the worst eras in the history of Marvel Comics, X-Men. You heard Chris Claremont have some thoughts on it. I imagine he's pretty, sympathetic with people that are frustrated with this. Where does this all come from? It comes from really bad creators and a really bad leader in Jordan D. White. I've covered this in depth. If you're wondering what happened, here's where to start.